think because global warming is a global problem, we really have to try to dissolve some of those political boundaries and work together as a civilization, because our very existence is seriously at stake. Let's see if I can do this right. Now, Robin and I were at the COP15 Climate Summit in Copenhagen, and this is the famous Bella Center. This is where the negotiations started and where they flopped, basically, in the end. That's what it looks like on the outside. I was on the train platform when I took this photograph, and it really caught my eye how apropos it is to have those power plant smokestacks in the background.
Is that a coal-burning power plant?
Pardon me?
In Denmark?
I don't know what they're using. You know, I don't know what the fuel was for it, because I didn't get close to it. But anyway, this was another important location for things that were going on relative to the summit. This was called the Klimaforum. Klimaforum is how they pronounced it. And I actually gave a speech there on December 11th to a really interesting looking audience. There were people from around the globe, and there were people, I was standing here looking at the audience, and most of these people had traditional costumes on. So I had people from Peru in their costumes. I had several different African countries in their various costumes. I had, there were actually, you might see the picture of this in here, the Dalai Lama and some of the people from Tibet. But anyway, this is what some of the rooms look like where the conferences were taking place. And I'm sorry, I'm blocking your view here. This thing won't work at all, huh? And this is what a lot of the workstations were like. My workstation was over in here, and this was inside the Klimaforum. There was another place called was it Clean Air Center or something like that, which I never found, and nobody could tell me where it was, but it was another place very similar to this. But everybody could plug your computer in and try to get on the internet, which I was not successful at. Copenhagen was actually shut down from the volume on the internet, and once a lot of the dignitaries found out that if you logged off you might not get a connection again, they stayed on. And so you were not able at all to get on. I couldn't even get on when I got back to Heathrow in London. You want to do the next one, Bill? Right. Thank you. This is Bill McKibben. Now, I realize he's not Sierra Club. He's 350.org. That's Bill McKibben. And this is one of my favorite journalists and writers. This is Naomi Klein. I think the best book that I read in 2009 was Shock Doctrine, that she wrote. Absolutely fantastic, must-read book. Next slide. I like the message in this. There were a lot of exhibitors, a lot of NGOs had their little exhibit areas around various rooms and so forth. And I thought that message was really pertinent. Next one, Bill. There you go. These are some of the people that were sitting in the audience when I was giving my presentation over there, and you can see various. You want to go to the next one? I think the next one. Here's some other people, I guess, from India. Next slide. Sikhs. Some of the people from Peru. Next slide. I really love this message. This was everywhere. The United Nations put me up. They boarded me with a family. I didn't. They had no hotel room, so I got to stay with his family up in a place called Ellerud, which was 5 kilometers, or I'm sorry, 30 kilometers north of Copenhagen. And everywhere you went in travel, you would see billboards like this, and they called it Copenhagen. Next one. This was in one of the squares in town, very close to this outdoor amusement park called Tivoli. And I don't know how well you can see it, especially in the back of the room, but this is a melting polar bear. This is the skull up here, the legs down here, and it was made of ice, and you know, it was symbolic that the polar bears are disappearing. Next slide, please. There's another Copenhagen. These things tooled around Copenhagen. Next one. This was to simulate what 1 ton of CO2 would look like in the atmosphere. It was this huge orange ball sitting out in the middle of the square. Next one, please. Now, I didn't know what I was looking at here. And by the way, you see how dark it is out there? It was like that all the time in Copenhagen. December. It was December. At any rate, what I learned later, because I think this was in the morning, this thing actually lights up in the night. It's sponsored by Siemens Corporation, and they do a lot of, they're making windmill equipment, a lot of other green energy type technologies. But in the nighttime, it lights up and it looks like the Earth that you saw in my first slide, or it at one point had swimming dolphins going across it, and just all kinds of really.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. No. These are actual tree trunks that were brought up from the rainforest, and they had them all around this art museum. You want to hit the next slide? And so they put out this thing about the tropical forests. This is the big billboard. They had a couple of these around the square as you moved around it. Next one. This is in an underpass going to the train station in Ellerud. Everything out there was field dressed for this climate summit. It was the biggest thing I think ever happened in Copenhagen. Next. This was back in the square, the same square where the melting polar bear was. And these were all World Wildlife Fund displays. They had them all over the square. Next one. Like that. Next one. That. Next. A lot of messages there about responsible agriculture. Next one, Bill. I forget who it was that sponsored this, but when we did our 100,000 person march, these were dangling down buildings pretty much up and down the boulevard. Next. Here again, Siemens, Copenhagen. Next. On the Thursday that Hillary Clinton came to the Bella Center, they removed all the NGOs and all the civilians. And so these things popped up, and I thought this was a really strong, pertinent message that, you know, we've been removed from the negotiating process ourselves. Next one. Then things started to heat up out on the street after the NGOs got taken out, and I was over at the Klima Forum, which was probably about 20-some blocks from this riot. But this riot broke out, and part of my job, I was over there for a couple different reasons, but one of my jobs was to be a reporter for Yes Magazine. And so I found out that this riot was going on, and the way I found myself, you know, the way I got myself from the Klima Forum to the riot was watching the news helicopters up above. I just kept running toward the helicopters, and I got over there. You want to do the next slide? And what they did was, this highway going this way went over an arched bridge over a canal. And they got the protesters on that bridge, and they closed it off on both sides for these police vehicles, and they had them trapped. And next slide. All of these people showed up. This guy, I forgot his name, but he's from NPR in Washington, D.C. And there were press people from all over the world. Next. This is me being interviewed by some French TV studio. I wasn't sure what questions they asked me, but I talked.